Welcome back. Today we're going to take a quick look at TANGZU's new Wan'er II, the second generation. So here it is up close. Again, they kind of slightly changed the shell style. It's slightly nicer, but it still mainly looks very much like the original, which is right here. And for the most part, you can actually see the biggest difference is right there on the 2-pin. So this one is a flat 2-pin as opposed to the QDC, which was I would call that a huge improvement. It definitely looks a lot more upscale without the 2-pin sticking out. You also do get the TANGZU balanced version of the tips, and you do get a red silicone set as well. So that's kind of what they look like there. And I'll say kind of right up front, if they had simply just changed the 2-pin and included these tips and then just called it second gen, I would probably 100% recommend it over the original. Don't change anything else. Just change these two things that people actually complained about, and then you get a nicer set of tips. This would have probably been a hit set, but instead they went through and changed some things up, and we'll talk about those right about now. So kind of look at the graph right here. You can kind of see it's not really radically different than the original one. It's very much the same up until something is going on out there. And again, our couplers that we use aren't super accurate out here, but I would say that they are relatively accurate. And there probably is a bigger level out there. There is some extra energy way out there in the upper treble that is noticeable on 2 that didn't exist on the first one. And perhaps they did rise even a little bit earlier on the 2K, on the ear gain. That moved things a little bit more forward, made them a little bit, it kind of apparently sounds easier to drive. If you move these a little bit more forward and add a little bit more energy, you don't need as much volume to listen to it. And again, the original was a really, really nice set. It didn't really need these changes. So it's not radically different. But the 2-pin, I think that would have been a great improvement. The tips, I think that's a great improvement. Is it a better DD? I think in their marketing, they say it's a better DD. I don't really know. The original was a nice DD as well. It was a nicely performing DD for the price. I don't think they changed that. I think this is probably still a nice dynamic driver. I can't really argue with that point. It still sounds kind of okay. But is there a real change out there? Is there more air? Does it sound like a wider stage? Is there more fatigue? Is there less volume scaling? And I'll say they accomplished all of those things in a change that wouldn't necessarily make it sound better. I think this one does kind of fall in this BL032 kind of update change. It's a change that doesn't necessarily sound better than the original. And I started out being the new one with the old one. And I kind of did that a couple times, and it's like, I'm just going to put the new one away. The old one is actually a really, really nice set. I like the old one. It's much easier to listen to for me. It didn't really have anything wrong with it. They didn't really need to make this change. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what they were thinking there, but it did something. So which is better? I definitely prefer the original, but if you're a low volume listener, then it might sound more detailed, more clarity, more forward, easier to drive. I do think at lower volume, this probably does sound perhaps better than the original one, but for everyone else, I think part of why the original one was so popular, had as much longevity as it did, was because the tuning actually appealed to a wide range of people. It didn't really appeal to only low volume people. It actually hit lots and lots of genres. There's enough bass there. It was a really nice upper mid vocal area. There wasn't really any harshness to it. It was just a really, really nice, appealing set to lots of people. And with this new one, they essentially kind of narrowed that gap and said, well, we're just going to address some things that the lower volume people probably care about, and then everyone else, you're going to prefer the original. So again, these changes, if you're a lower volume listener, then it probably works a lot better for you. But for everyone else, they definitely narrowed the scope of who this would appeal to. So if you're a higher volume listener, the balance on the original is just much better because it doesn't have all of this extra. They didn't need to double down on this. They need to move that a little bit more forward, and they didn't need to double down with a little bit more brightness in the upper end. The two don't really work together all that well. So is the original still a great set in 2025? Yes, the original is still a great set. I would most definitely pick up the original over the newer one. But if you do have the newer one and you were looking for a different sound signature, something that was perhaps more current in 2025 or 2024, I think these sets kind of, I think KZ's EDC Pro and K-Fine's Clean, you can kind of see they basically overlap through most of the frequency range. And that was just a slight variation on popular tuning, whether it was kind of a lower Harman style, a bassier but lower Harman style. I think that was what was popular in 2024. So if you did have the original and you just wanted something with a little bit more bass and kind of a similar lower treble region that sounded very appealing to lots and lots of people in the way that the original Wan'er did, I think these two sets, one is cheaper and one is more expensive. Those two will give you a different flavor, but a flavor that was more current from last year than where Wan'er was when it originally came out. But as I said, the original is a very, very nice set. There isn't really a whole lot of need to go explore these other two sets. This is a very fine set on its own. Those of you who are into lower volume, you may enjoy the second one, but for me, I'll take the original any day. So thank you guys again for tuning in, and I will see you next time.